All right, welcome back to the Rice Report, everybody. Eric Rice here, the place where you can talk openly about the three things you should never talk openly about: money, politics, and religion. We are going to be really focused in on politics here today. Today, we are joined again by Jason Bermas, one of my friends, one of the people out there who will absolutely cut through the knife of bias and try to get to the point of truth, which is what we're trying to do because the world, Jason, is completely divided by bias. You know, we do not have an unbiased, nonpartisan society anymore. Everything is me or you. So we're going to kick this thing off talking about our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who is notorious at this point, I would to say infamous at this point, for hiding the Epstein files, being involved in the first Epstein case as well, where he was let off very easily. And now she is talking about hate speech laws in America. And ironically, some people on the right who have been very against hate speech are now cheering for it because it's speech that they don't like. Where are we going with this, Jason?
In the worst possible places. I can only tell you that. You know, on the eve of Kirk's murder, and I was in DC, by the way. I was very caught off guard from the whole thing. My brother called me almost in a panic, even much before they announced that he was dead. And he had actually watched it. I was lucky enough that I didn't actually have to watch the gore until yesterday. And I'm not in love with having to watch that gore. But his concern was that I was hosting a 9/11 event in DC, and I was going to be introducing Tucker Carlson, among others. But Tucker ended up canceling after the fact. And, talk about speech reverberations. He didn't put out his 9/11 documentary that day either. And, I'm not saying that this was done in order to distract away from the 24th anniversary of 9/11, but the 24th anniversary of 9/11 essentially did not exist this year. Because of the event that took place. It was very much in the background. And when I went on that program, I said there are two things that are really dangerous about this. Obviously what happened to Charlie is ultra tragic. It's disturbing, disgusting. I went on the air almost immediately, and I had people with the laughing emojis and thinking it was hilarious. I had people in there saying, here's to you catching a bullet like Charlie. In my head, I went back to 20 years ago when, Loose Change was kind of at its peak, and we were being parodied on South Park as the Hardly Boys. In fact, if you want to see that, you can see it right here on the complete 10th season. And we're discussed in the DVD extras about our debate with Popular Mechanics. Just want to throw that out there. By the way, I have no issue with that. That's what speech is about, right?
Right.
You don't like Charlie Kirk, put him in Cartman's body, satirize him. That's fun. That's what we are as a society. Poke the bear, poke fun. Words are not violence. But now, like you just said, well, we're in this new world where all these people on the quote unquote right are talking about hate speech laws. Hate speech doesn't exist in this country, everybody. I got news for you. You want free speech? You need actual Nazis or people with those type of viewpoints. You have to defend their speech, no matter how disgusting it is. And I'd like to iterate that the only time that quote unquote words are violence is when you have a commander or somebody in charge that is going to order people right there, direct violence against somebody. And all of a sudden you are either a military, political, or authoritarian target. Of course, you have the right to defend yourself. Of course, Charlie Kirk was none of these things. And yet they want to make it like hate speech existed before this, and now going forward, we're going to have more hate speech laws. This is insane. Time and time and time again, thank goodness, our Supreme Court has rejected a lot of this. But you know what they haven't rejected yet, which should also trouble people, and now is kind of in the rear view, I believe over a month. Our president signed an executive order saying you can't burn your own property because it's the American flag and it's a symbol. That's not real, okay? I'm not saying I love burning the American flag, but if I own a piece of property and I want to make a political statement, I get to. Now, that's not the same thing as me going down the street and seeing an American flag on somebody else's property, taking that flag down and destroying. That's destruction of property. Maybe even trespass, breaking and entering, depending. We have laws on the books for that, okay? We need those laws on the book to protect others in their Fourth Amendment rights. That's security in your persons and property. This goes so far beyond that and actually eviscerates that idea. So, look, I think we're on the total wrong path. You mentioned Epstein. Patel was up there in the halls of, I believe it was the Senate just the other day, again, reiterating that there is no credible evidence that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked any of these women to anyone. Insanity as well. Just complete and total insanity. But if people were really paying attention, look, this administration came in hot and gave us a lot to hope for the second time around. As soon as it was playtime with phony binders, I was really hoping people were going to wake up. I'll say this. It's only through the court of public opinion that the binders and the initial Bondi revelation, the DOJ putting out, oh, no, there's nothing to see here, that we got Ghislaine Maxwell's interview with the DOJ, which I think honestly is actually worth listening to. That doesn't mean I believe her. But at the same time, there were some really big revelations there that, of course, the mainstream media didn't pick up on, but really the alternative media has been derelict in their duties. Some of just the highlights of the first hour plus was her admission that her father was British intelligence and then ran in those circles throughout her life. She also made this very odd revelation that I don't know how you don't follow up on, that prior to Epstein, while her father was going through a lot of the turmoil of not only his finances and that corruption being exposed in the public arena, but remember, it was Seymour Hersh and a couple others that first made the connection to him, and not only British intelligence, but the Mossad, right? So prior to him ending up dead off the Lady Ghislaine, his boat, she said that she was on a kill or capture list. Again, no one touched that. I'm like, oh, really? Oh, you were on some kind of a kidnap or kill list. We're not following up on that, and we didn't. So, look, I'm a big information is power guy. I'm not an ignorance is bliss guy. And when you say that you're for hate speech laws, you're an ignorance is bliss person, and you're not on the level. You don't even know it. You want to suckle at the teat of government narratives. On that same evening, and these are the biggest spaces on X. I want to thank Mario Nawfal for giving me a voice in these spaces and debates quite frequently as of late. But I'm discussing this with someone who's upset because people are speculating about the murder of Charlie Kirk. And look, I think there's a whole lot of Johnny nonsense out there. And, I think some of it's purposeful. Sure. I think there are crazy people out there. Everybody gets to speak. Yes. And this person was trying to make the argument that we were so much better off post-World War II in that 50s environment when there was one narrative. And I'm like, I don't know what planet you're living on, bro. I go, that is just not the case. And just for a modern day example, for those that want that one narrative and we've got to be unified, that one narrative that they were selling you during 2019, 2020, 21, 22 had you injecting bioweapons developed by the government multiple times, not only into you, but your children. Those are the narratives we want? No. So sometimes you got to dig in. You do have to take the contrarian approach. And dare I say it, do your own research. Step outside of these political boundaries that at the end of the day are nothing but labels. Like, you're not going to be any better off if you're a Democrat or a Republican. You might feel like you're better off because your guy's in the executive or your guy's the governor. But I assure you, the moment you step out of bounds on any significant issue and become a threat, the pressure will come to you. And you may even be made an example of. How many times did we see that during the COVID 1984 nightmare? In fact, we really saw the weaponization of that executive within an executive that took over post 9/11 through the Military Commissions Act, the National Defense Authorization Act, of course, the Patriot Act, Homeland Security, fusion centers. Who were the big domestic terrorists? You want more of that? That's nuts.
Yeah, it's almost like COVID's a great example. So I'll go back to burning the flag. I don't think anyone should burn the American flag, but it is your property. And this is an undisputable thing. Property rights are at stake. We already don't have property rights. You own a home? You think you own a home? You don't, because you have to pay taxes to keep it. So we already have a property rights issue. We already have that. We have privacy issues and property rights issues. And what's interesting is watching the puppet masters pull the narrative where one side will support it. So let's go to COVID. So did you liken COVID when you said that the vaccines are maybe bad for you and you shouldn't take them? And that was considered hate speech. And what happened when it was considered hate speech is those people started calling your employer because you put a post out on social media and used words. And then you were fired from a job for not complying with the narrative. This is cyclical. And I always hear this term, we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. Correct. The difference between a democracy and a republic is a constitution. And that constitution protects property and free speech and the right to worship who you want and so many other things. And if we start to bend a knee, the thing that's a guarantee in politics is with two parties, eventually the other party takes control. So when you pave a pathway, you have to understand that that road will be driven by two vehicles. And yes, for the time being, you may be protected in that area because your guy is in charge. But if that doorway to hate speech and the destruction of property rights, as small as it may be, and as useful as it may be for patriotism, like there certainly is a use, it's not the government's job to ban these things. It's our job as citizens to shame that activity and educate people on why they shouldn't do it. And I'll give you an example. When you have someone saying words, and like Jimmy Kimmel, I hate Jimmy Kimmel. I absolutely cannot stand Jimmy Kimmel. I know people related to Jimmy Kimmel. I know things about Jimmy Kimmel. Other people do not know, and they're disgusting, and he's a vile human being. And everything that he said is horrible. But what did the right just do? The right just became rats. Just like the left has been rats for the last decade. And we justify it by saying they did it to us. That's immature. That's exactly what we teach our kids not to do. Two rights don't make a wrong. We heard this since we were like two little kids, right? But instead of handling it ourselves, because you want to cancel Jimmy Kimmel, stop watching the show. Stop watching the clips. Stop giving him links. Stop giving him shares. Stop talking about him in general. That will shut him down. We don't need big daddy government to do this, because the way that this is working right now, and again, we don't know how this all turns out. All we can do is read the tea leaves and see the momentum of things and make an accurate prediction as to whether right now we're in a good place or bad place. And we're in a really bad place, because while all this stuff is happening, while we're seeing videos of Trump with the King of England, Palantir just got another contract for surveillance in the nation of England while he was there. At the same time, Larry Ellison, who's a demonic entity, now along with Mark Andreessen, who both have ties to the CIA and Mossad, who are both Zionists, are now in control of 80% of TikTok. While you're worried about Jimmy Kimmel, these guys are making billions, and they're doing it on the cheap. And the other thing about Larry Ellison, who is well known for saying, we don't need police anymore. We'll just use pre-crime technology and create police drones. If there's a car chase, we'll bring a drone with a gun and shoot the car with no due process. We're also talking about hanging a guy in public court, or in the public square, who is accused of shooting someone without giving him due process. This is pitchfork time in this country, and it's terrifying to see that there are no balanced voices. We must have adherence to the Constitution that has protected our nation, because what comes next is pre-crime, which is already being put in, right? We already have that. What is that? Gideon. You have Gideon, you have Paragon, so they can hack your phone. If they think you're a criminal, they can hack your phone. They can pull your stuff. They can accuse you of anything that you haven't done yet and arrest you and incarcerate you and put you on trial for something you haven't done yet. And eventually that comes down to guns. Eventually they take our guns. This is a slippery slope. And I know emotions are high in America, and I know everyone wants revenge against the persecution we've been through, but persecution retaliated with persecution is about as non-biblical as it becomes. Do not retaliate. You answer evil with good. That's biblical. Answer evil with good, not give the evil they thrust upon you. These are the things we need to go with. Let's talk about Palantir. Let's talk about the things that people aren't, because every time Here's the funny part, Jason, and I know you noticed this. Every time one of these, like the big beautiful bill, $150 billion goes to Palantir and their buddies. This is a CIA company funded by a CIA venture capital firm who just told us the other day, Alex Karp said, you know what? 2 government agencies totally declined doing contracts with us because our software simply can't monitor Americans. If you believe that, please come and buy an oceanfront property in Texas for me on the western side where there's no ocean. Because this is not reality. That is not how software works. That is not how that is how the CIA works. They will tell you it can't work against you while it's working against you actively. So when we look at these things, where are you thinking in this whole pre-crime? You know, and by the way, all of these software companies are Israeli based. These are not American companies, every one of them.
Well, I would say this, especially when you're talking about modern day software, there are so many people that are not aware that we just had DEF CON in May. And this is really not only a hotbed for this type of technology, but just like you said, the Israelis. When people were hot on that story of the quote unquote cybersecurity expert that was picked up. First of all, so many people got that story wrong. They're like, look, it's Israeli cybersecurity pedophiles. And he was caught with little. I'm like, listen, you have no idea what you're talking about. What actually happened is you have this conclave of experts in the security field. I mean, as deep state as it gets and as quote unquote actual white hat hacker as it gets, not super squirrel heroes on message boards, people that are actually checking it out. And they were showing a ton of software. In fact, they were showing how the Israelis could hack your chat GPT to essentially parade their narrative to you through the AI that's already placating to you. And then this individual that got arrested and then sent back to Israel, he was one of a dozen or so in Vegas where this sting took place that essentially succumbed to a Chris Hansen type have a seat sting and then was let go. So let to go back to Israel.
Yep.
So that should tell everybody something right there, that you and I are not the same as those even in the executive. No, this isn't somebody who's got a royal bloodline. This isn't even somebody that holds, an elected position in a nation. No, he's literally part of this global techno-fascistic surveillance state that they are building in front of our eyes. So when you look at things like Unit 802 and the Israelis, et cetera, you get this nice little plausible deniability circle, right? Mm-hmm. You get a bunch of people who kind of get it. And then they are concerned about lavender and they are concerned about pagers going off, but then they don't understand that's hand in glove with not only the United States government, but these technology subsidiaries that mask as private companies because they're traded on the stock market. They're not private companies. They're anything but, or they wouldn't be there at this point. Okay, that's not what Google is. That's not what Meta is. That's not what Elon Musk's X is. They are narrative management companies on the surface. And Google, of course, goes much deeper because Google's not even the parent company. For those that don't know, Alphabet is the parent company. And then you're going down into like a literal octopus of different companies that Google is a part of. But the Palantir thing is sort of hot, because there are people that have been able to articulate it over the years, even going back to the first Trump administration, Whitney Webb amongst them. And one of the things that you didn't discuss about Palantir, yes, they're very much this new international tool, software, et cetera, but they're also huge promoters of the World Economic Forum and that flavor of globalism.
Yes.
Alex Karp himself isn't anybody special, everyone, just to let you know. He just happened to be buddies with somebody who might be a little special, Peter Thiel. Yep. But this guy has now been able to social climb, where he is a steering member of Bilderberg with Thiel over the last decade or so. Okay. And people have not paid attention to that. So now you have that outward flavor of WEF, you will own nothing globalism, that they're not shy about. And you can watch Alex Karp up there giving presentations in his Bill Gates pink sweater and his funky haircut. No, he's just a goofy guy. But at the end of the day, That's the public face, and
Yep.
he is behind the scenes every year with 120 others that are the heads of banking globally, the heads of the military industrial complex, of our oil industry, of the next wave of these AI data centers that are now exploding. I mean, exploding. In my old town of Oneonta, New York, that has been completely and totally eviscerated from the COVID 1984 nightmare. This is, I say was at this point, a college town and a successful college town. The reason I say was is you would have about 6,000 students between the two schools, the one SUNY school, SUNY Oneonta, where I went, and then there was a private school, Hartwick. You usually get Connecticut kids, rich kids, and they had a great nursing program. In fact, a bunch of my bartenders that were women, they would get their degrees from Oneonta, but then they would go through this sub program at Hartwick. They don't have 3,000 people now. Let me repeat that. They're down almost half of the people that have signed in. All right. There is more heroin there than I have ever seen in my life. In fact, that town was the first town to have a Suboxone machine put into it. Just you go and you have the vending machine. You can go get it at any time. That's how many ODs were happening there. There was no homeless population when I went to school there. In fact, there was no homeless population to speak of when I left in 2020 during the COVID 1984 nightmare. There are people living on the streets. There are people wearing ties around their heads in a very, very small town. So now what are they going to do to save it? Well, out of nowhere, they announce we want a 157 acre AI data center on the outside of town. Now, this is a place that traditionally has been zoned for residential and farming, agriculture. Another thing that I've just seen ultimately eviscerated in upstate New York, when you actually had Cuomo during COVID 1984 saying, in some counties, there's more cows than people, which was true.
In most states, yeah.
Yeah, but now they want to put that data center in there. Look what they've done everywhere they've put these data centers. Do you get a benefit? Oh, we're talking about maybe, hundreds of jobs. Yeah, there's hundreds of jobs at the local Texas Roadhouse. Okay. And these aren't sustainable jobs. And in fact, they need more power than ever to run these things, full stop. They need a huge water supply. That's why they're setting up shop right outside of Otsego Lake, okay, to cool these things. And then your bill goes up. Your bill goes up. And do you get any benefits from these AI data centers that are used to not only track, trace, and database you, but now build an algorithm around you and your community to control you through narrative management? That's what it is. That's what it is, folks. It's nothing else. It's nothing to benefit you. They have lectured us as a species my entire life about how I'm bad because I drive an SUV. I'm bad because I've got a big house. I'm bad because I want a second or a third car. My carbon footprint. I got news for you. These things are going to make your carbon footprint look like a dust mite. Yeah. All right. And they're not sharing that with you. So I think we're obviously in a transition for these people. You mentioned pre-crime. Pre-crime, again, is not going to be as operable or successful without these AI data centers, and they know that. And then on top of that, I'm talking about a 157 acre data center, and that is extremely sizable for the area it's going in. That's nothing compared to what Meta is doing in Kentucky, where they're literally setting one up.
Or Elon's doing in Tennessee.
That's right. That these things are the size, 2/3 the size of Lower Manhattan, if you've ever been there, folks. And they're openly saying, it's not going to be the traditional ones that we're building now. And by the way, that first one that Musk has built, look what's happened in Tennessee in that area. They're paying more money. I'm sure they're not that far away from rolling blackouts that'll be blamed on something else, but you better bet your ass it's
solar flares, Jason. It'll be a solar flare.
They're telling you openly that at these data centers, they're going to build nuclear reactors, mini nuke centers. Now, this, again, is a technology they demonized to us, okay? And we're not allowed to use it. But now, all of a sudden, we're going to use it for the machines, not man, not humanity, but for these machines to essentially control us. If anybody thinks that this side of technology is there to empower us, I got news for you. All the data suggests, and not the pre-data, but what they've done, the stuff that you can actually see through pattern recognition, is enslave and eviscerate the human species. So people better start getting on their toes, man, because it's coming and it's coming quick.
Well, I will do a shameless plug. There are people like me who build off-grid data centers for Bitcoin mining. We use flare gas. It doesn't impact the grid, but that's not data centers. Data centers are using on-grid power. They are literally brokering the power that should be going to your home and diverting it to a corporation that, let's not call them, any of them, private corporations. I agree with that. They are agencies of the government, subsidiaries of agencies of the government. They have been funded by them. It's provable. Follow the money, you will see. They are going, that's absolutely correct. The energy cost around these data centers will be incredible, the increase that you get, and it will be blamed on we don't have enough energy, because one of the things that we were told, two things I remember from the campaign, point blank. One of them was, I'll end the wars in 24 hours. We have more war, and the wars that existed haven't dissipated, they've intensified. And the other thing I remember was drill, baby, drill, along with mass deportations. Drill, baby, drill hasn't been mentioned at all. That is the only saving grace we have for any of the we are literally, we are 61% of the energy of China right now. We do not even have close to the amount of energy China has right now. They have purchased all of it through COVID and our sanctions on Russia. They stockpiled on energy that we should have been buying. Now, the other thing is this, we're gonna shut down the border. That has happened. Okay, that's great. But yesterday, or excuse me, 2 days ago, they just accelerated the EB4, EB5 program with India. Now it's a 15-month sped up cycle. We are going to be flooded with more Indians who are fraudulently taking Americans' jobs. So if you think that while these data centers are being built, that American jobs will be created, that's not the case, because they will be occupied with employees from India, most of whom make up their resume like anyone eats a bowl of alphabet soup. They will be trained and indoctrinated into figuring out how to do what the overlords tell them to do, because that's what the Indian immigrants are really good at. They follow rules. But we are going to be inundated with Indians. We talked about this trade deal. You got such a great trade deal with India. Part of that trade deal was there are now, it's not just H1B or H8 or EB4, EB5. It's H1B. I think it's L1B. There are 7 new programs that accelerate immigrants coming from India into America at the exact same time that data centers are being built, soaking up all the electricity and increasing your cost as an American, taking your kids' jobs who just spent $250,000 to get a degree in computer science. Those degrees are not being hired right now. 68% of them are unemployed for 12 months after they graduate because an Indian's taking that job who doesn't even have the qualifications. They make it up. Where does this go? How is any of this America? That's the question that I have. And I know that there's like the 5D chess people like, oh, he's doing it to expose it. Come on, guys. Like, it's right in front of your face. There's no stopping what's happening right now. There's nothing that's going to stop it. There's no miracle pill. Indians are already, I'm in Texas. We are flooded with Indians, flooded with them. To be fair, because I try to be unbiased, about 10% of them are really cool and they like assimilate into American culture. The other 90% don't even talk to you when you walk by them. They are here to take money for 3 to 6 years and take it back to India. On top of this, Jason, we now have the bragging rights of $7 trillion in foreign capital coming into the country to build all this stuff. We're not even taking American money. Mark Zuckerberg was just at dinner at the White House, which I don't know how that happens, but he was at the dinner with the White House with the president, caught on a hot mic saying, first of all, he said, we're going to donate $600 billion. And then in a hot mic going, we haven't talked about a number, so I just made that up. Like, these commitments are not coming from American company. What do you think they're going to do with their profits? They're going to send it back to their own country. That's called repatriation. That's exactly how foreign investment capital works. They will put up the capital so they can build a company and provide jobs to Indian immigrants. And then once those Indian immigrants provide an extra 10% in revenue to them, they take that money, they send it back to their country. This is a dangerous territory that almost no one understands. How do we have people sitting on the sideline right now going, well, I think this will turn around, and I hope it does. Like, listen, I'm an optimistic guy. I hope all this 5D chess stuff is real. I just don't see it happening right now because I'm a realist. I live in the real world. I actually know about data centers because I build them. I actually know about politics because I talk to politicians and people who work inside those offices. Like, people who know that the trajectory right now is about as bleak as it's been in a very long time. And yet we get these patty cake, pacifiers that come out like, oh, we're going to stop burning the American flag. And you don't have to you have to take your shoes off at the airport. These are stupid. These are like distractions upon Oh, Jimmy Kimmel was banned for a day he's going to be back on air, guys. Like, don't be a fool. They're going to put him on air because he's a useful idiot. He provides a narrative of people like no one listened to Yuri's interview years ago, right? No one listened to it. Demoralize, destabilize, crisis, normalization. We are in the crisis phase, which means that we have already been demoralized. That's obvious. We've been destabilized. This is not a stable country at this point in time. And now we're entering crisis, where crisis will now be normalized. Fourth turning, whatever you want to call it. This process is very simple to see, and it's concerning to me. It just is. That's why I wanted to have you on here today, because you're one of the guys who'll come out here with no bias, period.
So let's just go back to the companies that are involved in artificial intelligence. One of the things that just everybody seems to be ignorant about, and again, I don't know why the alternative media is not doing better work on this. The fact of the matter is, if you are in that field,
why do you think that is, Jason? Let's go on that first.
I think it's by design. I think they want you to, oh, wow, it's face swap, and oh, it's a Bigfoot video, and it's Chat GPT, and it's all these other things. And really, just to be in the game, you need to sign up with the federal government's CAIO program. That is Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer program. And they have to have at least a top secret security clearance. Let me repeat that. All right. Your company's in AI, you're officially part of the government with a big daddy over it that talks to their daddy, in a compartmentalized way. And you can be audited at any time. You know who can't be audited? The government and the Lockheed Martins of the Raytheons of the world, the Googles of the world that have already worked with the military industrial complex and the DOD. All right. Does that sound like a rigged game to you? You bet your ass it is absolutely a rigged game. All right. So when you're looking at that, it's just like, whoa, what's going on? But let me speak. You talked about Indians. You talked about immigration. You talked about the one thing that Trump has kind of kept his word on are the deportations. Now, I'll say this.
Kind of. Yeah.
Kind of. Exactly. No matter how good these deportations get, are they going to even be able to get out the amount of people that were brought in during the Biden administration? I think that's an impossibility. Now, I'll say this. Just told you I was in D.C. It is the cleanest I've ever seen D.C. in my life. And I've been there a ton. I mean, I've been going there. I think the first time I went there, I was 12 years old on a school trip. The last time that I was there was probably about 2 years ago. And, homeless problem out of control. And I was right I stayed at the Beacon. So I was right in the heart. I did not fly in. I drove. I was driving in and out of Alexandria. I got a good look at it. That's not saying it's perfect. Mm-hmm. They cleaned that up. I mean, I couldn't believe how clean it really was. And by the way, I saw no people from the National Guard there whatsoever. It did appear that they had moved onto Chicago. And here's the deal. I wasn't one of the ones kicking and screaming that this was the wrong move. I wanted to see what they were actually doing and if they were doing it within the bounds of the Constitution. It does appear that way to me.
Absolutely.
That being said, the Muslim population in D.C. is something I have never seen in my life before at all. And I just want people to realize that. Like, a lot of people will talk about, the Mexicans. You just talked about the Indians. There's obviously discussion of migration in Paris, in the UK, Europe, with the Muslims. It was on that level in Washington, D.C. I went to 2 separate Walmarts, one in the heart of D.C., where you actually have to park underground, and one in Alexandria, which was much more suburban. I'm not that white, folks. I mean, I tan pretty well, but I'm the whitest guy in the entire place, and 3/4 of the staff are in hijabs. Okay, that's not hyperbole, that's real. The dominant language being spoken in these areas was Arabic. Okay, now when I think of at least my generation of immigrants coming from India, I can go back to being like literally 6, 7 years old, going to my local deli with my father and getting my favorite roast beef sandwich at a place where, yes, they were Indian immigrants. And that's
Mhm.
kind of where, like, a few years later, you'll get Apu, who's now been demonized on The Simpsons, although he's an actual representation of
Yeah.
reality of people that came here, got a business, got their citizenry, in other words, learned the language, passed the tests, and sure, were they sending money back to their family? Of course they were,
Sure.
but were they also buying and paying into our system of taxes? 100%. 100%. And there still
And our
is.
culture. They were trying to integrate into the culture. They were trying to be American, not bring India to America, not bring the Middle East to America. The assimilation fact, there's no forced assimilation. We have no culture, Jason. The
Brother,
American culture is dead.
again, the reason I go back to The Simpsons is, like, if you watch that show, Apu is out in his Americanized home and he's driving a Firebird, right?
Yeah.
The deli guy had a Firebird, like for real. Like, you could see it. Exactly. They wanted to be a part of the culture. Now that is no longer encouraged. That is to create divisiveness. That is to create even somebody like myself when they're in Chicago O'Hare a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, when the Biden administration is there and you're seeing these people funneled in and you're seeing them sleeping. Like, what is going on? Even where I am right now, which is the Quad Cities, I'm on the Illinois border. We're a satellite city of Chicago. And I drove out to DC. I have to drive through that area to go there. The National Guard was on their way to Chicago. Now, I don't know what they've done there, but I can assure you that when I came home, there is a noticeable difference in how many people who are clearly illegal immigrants in my area. Yeah, we certainly have an immigrant population, being a satellite city of
Sure.
Chicago in the Midwest. But I'm telling you right now, just within the last week, visually, I can see a difference. All right. So we got a lot of problems that are not being addressed and really only being empowered through these systems. And as you said, the ending the wars hasn't happened. Instead, there's been an expansion of military intervention. Now, at the same time, do I think that the people in charge are as bloodthirsty as the last administration? No, I don't. But I
Yeah.
don't see them being able to do anything about it. There's a lot of talk, but it's not talking the talk. You got to be able to walk the walk. And again, here we are, and it sure appears to me that there is no plan other than genocide and the overtake of all of Palestine, and therefore even more of the Middle Eastern region surrounding it, including Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. And if that's the case, not only does this not stop, at some point it accelerates. It accelerates. I could tell right away when the Europeans got together and little Rambo had his meeting, and now in his little black suit, and then he came in and that nothing was going to happen. He wasn't going to sit down with Putin. It was a nice little back pat. Hey, I'm trying to get this done. I'm trying to bring everybody to the table. None of those European leaders should have been there. They're trash. They're not the ones producing the weapons. We are. And I'm sorry, I don't care that now we're not paying for it. No, the taxpayers, we're making them pay for it. The war can't happen without our weapon systems and our military on the ground with these people. Now, don't get me wrong. The Israelis are slick. They've certainly gotten a lot of our technology and are able to operate a lot of that technology independently of the United States. But when you're getting into the big boys, when you're getting into the real weapons in space that I assure you are being utilized, okay? I'm sorry, color me skeptical on that Tehran strike, that it was B-2 bombers. I'm pretty sure they used other technology, folks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. We're stuck in these arguments, in these debates that have no relevance in what's actually going on, but instead are set by parameters of a false narrative constantly. And I got news for people. If we allow these hate speech laws to be extended, that narrative is going to get much, much more narrow, and you're not going to be able to step outside of it.
That's exactly right. And now, but we heard about all these peace treaties, right? Like there's now a Nobel Peace Prize. Now nobody heard of any of these wars. By the way, Cambodia started shooting at each other again, so that peace treaty is already squashed. Israel has ground invaded a nation that has no military or weapons. That's happening in Palestine. They are genociding Palestine. And I think before they go to Lebanon, Syria, and Iran, I think they go after Jerusalem because the Dome of the Rock is the location of the third temple, and the red heifers are already in Israel. This is a known fact. I actually know the guy who birthed the red heifers here in Texas. I know that for a fact. That prophecy is for the end times, for the world to go all go against Israel for the sacrifice of the red heifer and the Meshech, the Jewish Messiah, to be brought to earth. Because only at a time where the entire world is against Israel will that happen. They do not care that 142 nations recognize Palestine as an independent state. They do not care. They do not care what anyone says. They are slaughtering everyone that they can find. And that's just a fact, no matter what kind of rhetoric or propaganda you hear. We don't even know the death toll because most of those people, there's no government. Palestine has no government. They don't have social security numbers. They don't even have addresses. Now they don't even have homes. I don't know how destroying every home in a region is warfare against people who live in a house, but apparently it is. Apparently it's a vicious war with an enemy that throws sticks at them, so they must shoot everyone. But mark my words, the Dome of the Rock, the Third Temple, and Jerusalem will be targeted in the next 2 years, and that will escalate things between Muslims and Jews in the region, which ultimately always ends up with Christian men from America going to fight that war. That's how that happens. And it's happened that way for 50 years. And if you want to debate that this time is different, feel free. I'm open to listen. I just don't see that possibility.
No, it is different because it's going to accelerate even further. And if you get to the Dome of the Rock, I mean, you're literally getting into religious prophecy. And here's the deal. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I have long since rejected religion in numerous ways. I've seen the hypocrisy of the quote unquote true believers on all sides. I'm also not here to take a hot steaming dump all over it. I think that many of the religious tenets of peace and prosperity are valuable ones. But I always say this, color me skeptical. And at the same time, I think it's more and more dangerous the more ridiculous the outfits get. And the outfits are pretty fucking ridiculous. Like these people mean business when they say, hey, we want to take the Dome of the Rock and we want to rebuild Solomon's temple. So I would just suggest all those people out there that don't know about Solomon, the son of David, etc., to do just a little digging into what that actually means and what these religious tenets are and what the return of their Messiah means, not only to the Zionist Jewish community, but then the Christian Zionist community that very much wants to make Revelations a reality for some reason. That's the last thing that we should want to bring into play. I get it. You got a Jesus Christmas fix. Okay, fine. But if you read the book, just I was watching Sam Hyde, and he's got his two little guys, and the one guy's a Christian. He goes, well, at the end we win. No, actually, at the end you lose big, and then at the very end, at the very tail end, there's a victory. But that's not until after we've literally gone through the worst we could possibly go through on this planet, and yes, an authoritarian global government. I don't want to live through that. I don't want to bring that into prophecy at all. In fact, I want to actively push against that for as long as possible, because the longer that we are able to push against that successfully, the freer the human species will be. I assure you, because as those restrictions come in, we are all in trouble. Okay. Christians, Muslims, Jews,
humans.
Exactly. Humans.
Yeah, what people don't understand is that Christian dispensationalism or prophetic futurism, which is what this is called, is first of all, it's literally heresy. It is a misinterpretation of the Bible in almost every categorical way. But it also is this apathetic marching order where it's like, Okay, well, it just has to happen. We don't have to follow all the other commandments or the rules that Jesus gave us because, it's just going to happen.
Mhm.
I've done a 2.5 hour video on that. It's done very, very well. If you want to watch it, it's only on Rumble. YouTube did not allow that video to be uploaded, by the way. It's called The Threat of Christian Zionism, which is just as bad as Jewish Zionism. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. There are actually Muslim Zionists, guys. It is not what you think it is. It is not people who simply believe in the right of Israel to exist. That is not the definition. Do some historical research, find out who they were, because their history of Zionism is far worse than you can possibly imagine. But Jason, first of all, this is a great conversation because I a lot of times talk to people and I try to keep people with bias. Sometimes I bring overly biased people on here because I try to trap them into saying stuff that I know they're going to say anyway. And that's fun. And they have the right to their opinion. That's the other thing. People have the right to their opinion, whether you like it or not. That's also part of free speech. Now, there is a part of me that says that all this, there's these narratives, right? So there's one. Before I do this, Jason, I'm just going to state this. There's a video. I'll send it to you, or maybe I'll post it on social media or something. You could share it. It's a 1 hour video of a pastor actually talking about this dispensational point of view and how they believe in the Antichrist being a man when Antichrist is actually a spirit. And there's a 16-point checklist of the Antichrist, like in prophetic futurism or dispensationalist. They have a 16-point check mark. Barack Obama fit 14 of those. So when Obama was in office, he was the Antichrist. Trump actually fits all 16 of those, and they voted for him in droves. So prophecy by itself, when it's interpreted by multiple people, is used as a weapon against others. Like that's.
And let me just say this about this whole Antichrist thing. His original Secretary of Technology was Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
And Peter Thiel has just sold out a 4-part lecture series on the quote unquote Antichrist. And I got to tell you,
it's autobiographical.
Yes. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but I'll say this. I don't think it's ever going to be in the public arena. I'm not sure they're going to be taping that one. I kind of hope they are. You give these people enough rope, eventually they hang themselves in the court of public opinion, and that is our best tool, right? Information truly is power. But yeah, that is, it may have already taken place. I remember there was a buzz around it a few weeks ago. There was a website. Again, I've been out of town and I got a little sick afterwards. I can't keep up on everything, but that was certainly something that was on my radar. And it's not usually a subject that I talk about. Obviously there is a time and a place to talk about that subject. And I think that time and place is when you have one of the most powerful industrialist social climbers in the world with those connections giving lectures on it to other elites surrounding them.
It's fascinating. And Peter Thiel rearranged the words. It spells the reptile. Like his name actually spells
the reptile when he got asked about lavender, didn't he?
Oh yeah,
how about that, Peter?
Well, when he talked about the Antichrist in that one interview I saw with him, it looked like he was just pouring sweat, like just pouring sweat. So there's a lot of prophecy will be used as a narrative control for a specific part of the population. Misinformation is already being used, like some stuff like this. Like all I want is like I would like to go back to Trump's first term because at least we were being told the truth. Now we're being told wages are rising faster than they have in 60 years while no one has a job. No one has any money. We're still being told inflation's at 3%, yet the dollar lost 10% of its value this year. So at a minimum, just on inflation is in the word inflation comes from inflating the money supply. That's why they call it inflation. So if we have been inflated to a 10% decrease in buying power of our dollar, that's actually inflation.
And it's not 10%.
No,
Listen,
it's like
15 I tell everybody,
20.
In 2019, 2020, I was paying 88 cents for a gallon of purified water.
Yeah.
I'm paying $1.38 every gallon of purified water. You do the math on that. It's about a 35 to 40% increase in real world goods. Has my gas price gone down? No. I'm sorry. I thought, like you said, drill, baby, drill. Gonna happen. Has my rent? It's not going. Oh, wait, my electric. Oh, no, that hasn't got my what? No, nothing has gone down. The one thing that they could point to is the eggs are less than $3 a dozen. I got news for people. Again, in that same time period, 2019, 2020, I am in the Midwest, but 99 cents a dozen max. Matt, there's some people, hey, you couldn't give away eggs away. 69 cents a dozen. Now you're talking, if it's under $3, you've made it, baby. You've done
Stock up on it under $3. Yeah. And that's a 200% increase.
Yes.
That's like a guy who you start working with and you gain 100 pounds as a personal trainer, and then miraculously you lose 20. And he's like, look, see, you've lost weight, right? You've lost a lot of weight. Yeah. When I moved to Texas in 2020, gas was $1.77. This morning, I filled up at $2.87. Like, that's just the reality. And when Biden was in office, it was around 260 to 290, sometimes 315 at the end of his term. So prices are exactly still the same, yet we'll be told over and over again that it's getting better. And I just hope that people watch this interview, and I hope they remove bias and just listen, because everything in here is provable, with the exception of my assumption of Dome of the Rock. That is an assumption. That is my projection.
It's certainly a rabbit hole to go down, though, Eric.
Yeah, it's one that everyone should. Most people know nothing. Like, I posted out, can we stop using the phrase, this country was founded on Judeo-Christian values? This country was not founded on Judeo-Christian values. And I'm not talking about the Constitution or our documents. I'm talking about the people in this country were believers in Jesus Christ. 95% of them. Yes. 5 of our founding fathers were deist. Yes, I totally understand that. The rest of them, actually, in our original 13 colonies, everyone had to publicly profess that they believed in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. That's when we actually wrote these documents. So, like, we don't even know our history. We don't understand religion. Religion has become a podcast. It hasn't become, like, first of all, let me say this and preface this on religion, and then we'll move on. Relation is greater than religion. Let me repeat, relation greater than religion. Religion can be contorted and is used to divide people. Pray, believe in God, talk to God. Everything else, you do your own research, and it's books. Like, relation greater than religion. But this is a swirling tornado that we're dealing with now, because not only do we have to worry about our own people, we have to worry about other cultures coming in here constantly. I did not know the Muslims were that prevalent in Washington, D.C. They are here. We have a neighborhood that operates illegally under Sharia law for 2 years in Dallas that no one's done anything about. Sharia law. Dearborn, Michigan, Sharia law. We have people in Houston trying to implement Sharia law. We have Muslims, Indians, we have Turks. We have everyone here in this country. You know what we don't have? New Americans. 1/3 of our country right now is either here illegally or legally, but they are not born in America. 1/3 of America is not American. That is frightening. And I hear no one talking about this. And the visa numbers track with the illegal numbers, track with the existing people who are here who are on an extended visa, will prove that point, because everyone's going to watch us go, you're full of crap, Eric. That's statistically correct. And now we're increasing the amount of visas. Like, where does this go? We have surveillance technology, so we'll never be able to talk about this because it'll be a pre-crime at some point. They're already passing anti-Semitism laws. Let me reinstate this as well. You have the right to say anti-Semitic things because we have what's called free speech. You also have the right to retaliate to those statements or ignore those statements because you have free speech. You do not have the right to tell anyone what to say or think in this country. And if we do not protect that, we are on the same path as Bolshevik Russia, who was the first people in known history, recent history, to ban speech and make it prisonable. I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because this is exactly what's happening. And what do we do about it? That's the question I have. There's not a whole lot we can do about certain things, but there are things that we can do. I mean, you literally put your name out there every day. I do the same. And we are fighting a battle, but the resistance that we get from the slaves on the plantation is unbelievable. How defensive Americans are about their political candidate, about the government. None of these people care about you at all. Actually, people like you care about other people to learn things so that they can live a better life. So where do we go? What do we do, Jason?
Well, let me just say this and kind of end on it. You talked about the fact that we have all these quote unquote speech laws that they're trying to put into place. When was the last time you heard a young person go, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me? I haven't heard it at all.
20 plus years at least.
20 plus years. And we stopped instilling that in our youth. And that, I think, was extremely important. Instead, now words are violence and they do hurt. And look, I get it. And, it's a pretty simple thing, and somebody can say something that can be very hurtful to you, etc. But the point of saying that is to say, even though that hurts on the inside, it's time for a little bit of reflection. Okay, did you cut yourself? Did you break something? Are you physically harmed? Are you able to recover? Yes, you are able to recover from those things unless you get in your own head and you start taking this victimhood mentality. And the more you play into it, the more you're going to become that victim. And the more you're actually going to eviscerate your ability to think critically, to act independently, and really do what we need as a human species and move beyond words into actions that are positive. So I would say it's going to be an individual journey foremost, and that you have to think locally and act as locally as possible so you can have that global impact. And it's not going to be so much global all the time, but the reason that you're doing is because you want your household in order. And hopefully, if your household's in order, perhaps your neighbor's household will become in order, and you can build those type of communities. It really does go back to what we were talking about in, that immigration culture that we lived through as kids in the 80s and even early 90s, when people came here to be Americans with their little flags and I want to become a citizen. That's not the case anymore.
No.
That's why we have all this propaganda surrounding the global citizen movement and the United Nations and the World Economic Forum and all these NGOs that ultimately are beholden in some way to those ideal sets of command, control, and consolidation of information and power.
I couldn't agree more. And if I see one more congressional hearing, I might vomit. Stop cheering for these things. Start getting to action, talking to people. All they do is lie to you anyway. Like, what have we seen from these things in the last decade? There are clear criminals in this country, and nothing is being done about it. And until we start taking accountability for our own lives, I think our lives are, we can't blame them on anyone else. We can't. I think that advice is very sound. I buy beef from local ranchers. I do all that kind of stuff. Like, that is exactly what you need to do. And most of them will take cash or gold. No one even knows you're doing it. That's the fantastic part about it. So, Jason, I couldn't agree more. Thank you for coming on here today. Everyone, let everybody know how they can follow you, and we'll put all this stuff in the video for you as well. We'll tweet this out. We'll get it out there, because I think this conversation, number one, needs to be had. Like, there are things in front of our face. We are being told that, oh, this is step 1 of step 10, and we'll get to step 10 eventually. That's not actually how history works at all. History moves quickly. It's gradually, then suddenly, with everything. And we are in that suddenly phase right now, and getting out of that is almost impossible. So we need to really keep our foot on the gas. So, Jason, how can they all follow you?
Eric, thanks for having me. I am at Jason Bermas, Bermas, just about everywhere. You can find me on X if you want to see the news stories that I'm talking about, my hot takes, if you will. But if you want to watch all of my documentary films for free, they are across a multitude of platforms. Obviously, I have a Rumble, but for some reason, I've been able to grow on YouTube for the first time in 5 years, where I was literally stagnant and was stuck at about 71,000 for those 5 years. And in only 4 or 5 months, we've gained another 4,000 subscribers. If you go there in my playlist section, you can see the documentary section. And really, that is my voice. You don't have to hear me or just look at me. Instead, I really show you with evidence that you can follow the truth about 9/11 through Loose Change, Final Cut, and Fabled Enemies. The bigger picture out there with Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture. So please go check out those films, share them with everybody, burn them to disc, put them on little USB drives, and give them to others, because I truly do believe that information is power. Ignorance is not bliss, and it is really up to you to be your own hero and not look to others.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Well, God bless you, Jason. God bless all of you out there. We'll see you next time on the Rice Report. Thanks, everybody.